What's up guys, Lvladen here, and today I'm coming at you with a video on the 11.1 live realms. We are going to be talking about some of the best PvP builds that you can play as Ret in Season 2. So let's start it off with the standard Herald of the Sun Radiant Glory build. I've been kind of leaning back in towards Radiant Glory with Herald of the Sun as of recently, with a slight amendment to the right side of the Retribution tree here. So if you notice, I'm now playing Rush of Light and Righteous Cause rather than Art of War in one Zealot's Fervor point. Rush of Light, even without playing Crit Wings, I feel like has higher uptime this season after you get the 4 set. So as human Red Paladin, you have about 10% baseline crit with the standard set gear here. And even though that's still kind of a low percentage, the uptime on Rush of Light is no longer pretty much 0. And this comes into play even more when you play the 1 minute wings build here, which I'll talk about next. That is just taking 1 point out of Radiant Glory, putting it into Divine Wrath, and swapping over to Avenging Wrath Might. The main difference in strength for this build is it has much higher burst, and I recommend running the 1 minute wings build with a badge trinket. And with the Radiant Glory build, I recommend running a insignia of Alacrity. So the main difference between the two right here is that the crit wings build will allow you to actually pump out pretty similar burst to Templar in your first 3 globals, because your wings and your badge are buffing the flat damage of your Final Reckoning and your Wake of Ashes, which will both hit very, very hard, along with your first couple of Final Verdicts. It also has extended uptime on Sun's Avatar. Of all the games that I've played in my 2s, 3s, and solo shuffle, this is actually the build that I've played the most. Right here in solo shuffle, we finally started doing a little bit better this week. And then in 3s, I think I'm the 3rd highest Ret in NA right now with Ret in 3s. I'm not quite sure, but our win rate is pretty decent. I really think this season Ret feels pretty much like a B tier spec. It has some decent comps like Ret Warrior, Resto Druid. It can do well, but the downside is it's really pretty much carried by the Resto Druid and Warrior strengths. Resto Druid has extremely high healing output, and Warrior has extremely high damage. You're really there as a support with your Sanctuaries, Freedoms, Blessing of Protections. Your burst is okay with this build here, and which leads me to the next build I'm going to talk about here, which is Templar, which most people think is our biggest burst build, and I don't think so. Whether it's my luck or whether it's Hammer of Light being undertuned or bug, I really don't know, but I hardly ever see my Hammer of Light hit higher than like 2.2 million. Very rare occasions I will see it hit for about 2.6 to 2.8 million. But for the most part, it's been doing the same damage as last season. And the downside of Templar now is that even though that damage is decently high, like 2.2 to 2.6 million, HP pools are now at 11 million. 11 million, and I'm not even full gear. Pretty much my whole left side here, aside from my neck, is prized Warmonger's gear. So I'm going to have a little bit more stamina whenever I get full geared. And so will other people. So that 2 to 2.6 million Hammer of Lights really aren't chunking as hard as they were before. Now, that's not to say that Templar is absolute garbage. I think there's a couple scenarios where you can play it, like into, I really like playing Templar into Feral Druid Warrior comps, which is pretty rare on the ladder right now, to be fair. Same with Cleaves in general. Like, Templar can be played into Cleaves, but it's just not, they're not common. They're really not common. Like, I think I've seen one DK Warrior Cleave out there and one Feral Druid Warrior Cleave out there, and then everything else is with a Mage or some sort of caster plus Windwalker, Warrior, or Rogue, or Feral Druid. There's a couple jungles out there too, but then even then I still recommend Herald. A lot of you have asked me about my thoughts about Divine Hammer. Now, on a PvE dummy with Divine Hammer, it pumps. In BGs, it can pump. But in realistic solo shuffle and 3v3 scenarios, I find myself with very low uptime on Divine Hammer as opposed to, you know, being able to hit a dummy pretty much on global with your final verdicts, extending the duration of Hammer Wrath, even with the, extending the duration of Divine Hammer, even with the 4-set. So I've kind of opted to take Judge or Executioner. Again, with the 4-set, I've really liked Rush of Light for all 3 of the builds here. And then with Templar, again, I'd most likely swap over to a Insignia of Alacrity rather than the Badge of Ferocity. And that's pretty much the main differences between the 3 builds. If you're asking what my favorite is, at the moment, I think it's pretty safe to say that you can't go wrong with the Radiant Glory build. I think it's more commonly played than the 1 Minute Wings build. However, I think at the very top of the bracket, it's really 50-50 between the 1 Minute Wings and Radiant Glory. I do think that Radiant Glory is a tiny bit better in solo shuffle because you get more frequent goes. Even if they're not as strong, dampening just racks up so quickly in solo shuffle. Whereas in 3v3, when you are trying to burst someone down and dampening is not that high, you can still kind of get out some decent bursts with the 1 Minute Wings plus Badge plus Final Reckoning Wake combo. So it does a lot of damage, but you know, the downside is it's every minute. But again, 3v3 arenas are longer than solo shuffle arenas, so that's kind of why I lean towards a Radiant Glory for solo shuffle. But either work in either bracket. I played both to pretty much the same success in either bracket, but just as a talking point, I do think maybe Radiant Glory offers a little bit more versatility in in solo shuffle arena. Outside of that, I do think Ret is, you know, it's a solid B tier right now. It's clearly not as bad as it was before. I'm not sure if it's a Ret problem or if it's other classes being too strong. But Ret does not really have a place in the meta right now, which leads me to put it kind of lower on a standard tier list. I honestly haven't played too much Blitz this season, so I have no idea how it's doing in Blitz. But solo shuffle, it's okay. It's not the best in solo shuffle, but it's definitely okay. Threes, it's not that great. I really hardly ever see any other Red Paladins. I think the only other Red Paladin I've fought, actually I fought 2, I think. I fought this guy named Max, and I fought Vanguards, and then I know there's another Ret Zozo that queues, but I've never queued into Zozo this season. There's not many on the ladder. Even though there are a lot of Ret players in general, there's just not a lot, around the higher end of the bracket, which I'm not even in the higher end of the bracket, guys. I'm 2288, and I think, actually, let me check right now. Let me go to check PvP, double check. Activities, nope, rankings, Ret, threes. I'm third. There's KZ Fox and Vanguards who are ahead of me right now. And yeah, I mean, there's just like after 2200, Ret just falls off a cliff. So yeah, I do think maybe there's room for buffs for Ret, whether that's like increasing the damage a little bit or just reworking a lot of the PvP talents. I really think like Ret is close to being good. It's definitely close to being good. It's just we don't really have a huge variety of PvP talents that actually affect situations. I'm not gonna lie, I would be okay with them kind of removing Blessing of Sanctuary and in turn giving some actual decent PvP talents back into the class that actually make the class feel good, rather than, oh, okay, we can't have Ret like have really strong burst or damage because it has so much utility. I'd be okay with pulling back on some of the utility to give some of the damage. I've always really enjoyed the bursty, one-shotty aspect of Ret, and it's kind of trickled off into more of a support style role in this expansion, and I want that burst back. It's kind of funny how really like reliant on Aura of Reckoning Ret damage was from last season. Like, it's very clear throughout the 2 weeks that we got in a row of buffs how effective Aura of Reckoning was in PvP for Wings uptime. Because our overall damage definitely shrunk massively after we lost that talent and Luminescence. All right. Anyways, that is kind of my thoughts on how Ret is going right now. The 3 builds, I will leave them in the description below. Let me know in the comments what you guys are playing for your builds, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.